Hello and welcome to the My DW podcast powered by Precision Hydration. This is the place to come to listen to all experiences of the ThruDark Devizes to Westminster International Canoe Race. I'm Rob Hansford, and joining me for this episode is a true DW veteran, Peter Waklker. Hi Peter, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, happy to be here. I feel a bit of a fraud because I'm a good average paddler. I am Div 5 and I've been Div 5 for about 12 years or 13.
As I said, you're a true veteran of DW.
Yeah.
11 finishes under your belt, isn't it?
I've got 11 finishes, yeah. My first was in 2006 and my last was this year, so 2025. And I think, I know I've got 8 finishes, senior finishes with 8 different people. I don't know what that says about me, but I have got the finishes and I got the tie, which is great. I love the tie.
We'll start it off then. I mean, how did you get into paddling in the first place, and DW specifically?
I grew up in Torbay, and through the Sea Scouts I got into rowing, and that was in gigs on the sea. And then, having broken an oar, they marched me up to Paignton Rowing Club, and then I rowed. And I was doing a race later on in my rowing career called the Boston Marathon, which is 31.5 miles. And there was a K4, and they were about the same speed as us. And then in passing them, they said it was a walk in the park for them because they were training for the Devizes to Westminster race, which was 125 miles. And then later, I moved to Pangbourne as a rowing coach, and it's obviously a great place for kayaking too. And in the end, I took up kayaking, but it took me another few years. So about 2006, when I found I could do the Devizes to Westminster at last.
And you've been a member of Pangbourne Canoe Club the entire time you've been
all my membership, all my kayaking, I took up kayaking at Windsor Canoe Club because I was teaching at Windsor Boys, and then my wife wouldn't move down to Windsor, so we ended up at Pangbourne, and then I took up kayaking at Pangbourne, and there was a lady called Lynn Whitaker who had done she had the ladies veteran K1 record, so she took me out. So she was the first person to sort of stick me in a K1. And then a friend of mine, Adrian, he had done Devizes to Westminster, and I kind of thought, wow, this is it, I have arrived. He didn't tell me it was a 4-day event, but I caught up with that later. So I met a guy called Tug, and Tug had done the race twice, and I thought, good, I need someone with experience. So I said, I'd like to do it. He said, well, I'd like to do it. I said, I'd like to do it in 24 hours. He said, well, I think I can manage 27. And I thought to myself, well, I can drag you down to 24. And so I teamed up with Tug, and nobody stopped me.
That was it? First finish at first attempt, was it?
I did the Waterside series in a K1. I did it in a hobby.
Right.
And I did Waterside A, B, C, and D. And I got to the end of D, and I was paddling along with another guy in a K1. He said, come on, let's go and put our entry in for the senior race. Or, the Devizes to Westminster. You can do your last entry at the end of Waterside D. And I was completely shot. But there was no way I was going to do it in a K1. And the hobby was fiberglass and it was heavy. So it was with Tug. I did the first race in 2006. And we did the warm-up races. So we did Waterside A, B, C and D. But people had gone home by the time we finished.
Right.
And I looked up his previous times, and I think it was 41.5 hours and 39 hours. And I said to the kids at school, this is quite bad. I go faster in a K1 than I do in a K2. And a little boy who hadn't spoken said, sir, have you not thought, do you think it might be more important for Tug to finish than for you to do a good time? And I took those as words from God rather than from this young lad, so there was no way out. I started the race with Tug, and then the support crew came into their own. We could not finish.
And I mean, how was that first experience of the race? Obviously, being something that you'd been looking at for a bit of time. How was that first experience?
Well, I think incidents speak louder than words. So We were first reported missing on the canal, and we had stopped, and we were cooking spaghetti bolognese from raw ingredients, and so they lost track of us. Mrs. Waklker had done 24 hours, so she was going home, and she received a phone call to say, your husband is missing. And then time passed. We were probably paddling on our own. We were in a mist-steer, and I got to Windsor, and I'm blind in one eye, and I'd picked up conjunctivitis in my other. And my mate Neil, he's a wing commander, and he lives in Devizes. He'd driven over from Devizes to Windsor, and my wife gave him to me to support. And he looked at me and thought, God. And then he said, well, Peter, get back in the boat. He said, I've driven all the way over from Devizes. Off you go. And that's what your support crew is supposed to do. They don't take an assessment of your welfare. They put you in the boat and they say, we'll sort it out at the next portage. So we carried on, and we got to Teddington, and we were on the second tide, and the last minute of the second tide to go through. And the guy said, are you all right to carry on? And Tug lied and said yes. And then we got, is it Richmond half-lock?
Yeah.
Some half-lock anyway. And I thought people were joking. It was like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It was coming down. And I was looking around and I wanted someone to be laughing, but they weren't. So we had to go over to the far left-hand side, and it was super slippery. And Tug was by this time not able to get in and out of the boat. So we fell out the boat. And then I had him legs astride of the mist-steer, and I pushed it through his legs. And then he sat on the canopy between the two holes, and it was just cracking. And oh God, you nearly cried. And then, we must have stopped twice on the tideway on the way down, and people were looking for us to finish. And I don't know if they can disqualify us now. Our light wasn't the brightest, and we must have finished at about 11:15. And they were going to send out a search party when I said hello. Yeah, we are the missing crew, and we have finished. So that was my first finish. And hang on, let's see. It was 34 hours and 50 minutes, and we were 73rd. And Tug still contacts me every year to say, well done, and I started your run of 11 finishes. So thanks, Tug.
It was quite an adventure for the first year and the first attempt at it.
It's kept me going through the other nights, because not that it can't get worse, but you know that you have finished something which perhaps other people wouldn't have finished.
Yeah, what does the race give you generally? Like, as you say, obviously, that sense of achievement it's kind of something just beyond just saying a bucket item list, isn't it? It's
a benchmark in my life. So everything can get compared to it. I've been a teacher for 27 years, a physics teacher, and I teach in my own idiosyncratic way. And if I get introduced to the headmaster's study, I think, it can't, I've got other things to lean back on. The Devizes to Westminster says, I can face adversity, I can measure myself against adversity, and this is something that perhaps half of the crews, or maybe 2/3 of the crews, sometimes don't finish, and I do, so I know I can weather the storm. And other people who paddle with me, they can weather the storm too. It is something that sticks on your CV, and it can't be taken away from you. And I love it for that.
Yeah, and as you say, it gives you sort of real life lessons as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than just taking part in a race.
Well, one of the things I enjoy about it is it gets me out in the daylight during the winter. So I suffer from seasonally affected disorder. So depression is something that, it's in a family gene, and it's self medication. So I'm out there getting daylight, and a repetitive exercise is something that helps fight negative thoughts. And also it's Easter, and I'm a Christian, and my mantra is the Lord's Prayer. I repeat the Lord's Prayer over and over again, and count to 1,000 sometimes. And then when you're heading down, I think through Kingston, for the senior race, they have a morning service on Easter morning. And I tend to arrive at the Lord is risen, and I can shout across the water, He is risen indeed. And yeah, it makes them smile, and I know I'm on schedule then for a good finish.
That's how you measure your time.
Yeah. Oh, they're there, and I'm coming through. It's great. I love it.
And I mean, we were going through, weren't we, before we started recording, but the number of finishes, and not just the number of finishes, but obviously several finishes in different classes across senior doubles and the stages race.
That's right. So so my first race was obviously with tug, and that was 34 hours, and I wanted 24. And you need to choose your partner carefully. So I was back down at Pangbourne. I couldn't face going the next year, but 2009, I met a chap, Robin Tilbury, and he'd done it twice before. And so that was brilliant, you know. And Robin and I paddled really nicely together. And we paddled a boat called a Merlin, a Marsport Merlin. And it was designed for heavy people, and we paddled it well. And then I went down to the club one day, and he caught my eye. And he said, "You found out?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, my times aren't recorded." So they weren't on John Ince's database.
Right.
I found somebody else who had perhaps got some rogue results. And he had been disqualified for being too young, which was okay. So Robin and I, we paddled well together. And one of the things that you might want to take into consideration, he couldn't eat on the move. So at Marsport, we stopped for 3/4 of an hour to let his food go down before paddling on. And both of us had niggles, and you will get niggles. His was his shoulder, and then mine was my shoulder. I may have said to him, "Now I'm paddling just like you," you know. So that sort of thing happens. It's allowed to happen. I think if you're an army crew, you're allowed to hit each other once and then get on. So yeah, Robin and I, and he had a great support team, and my wife again on board, and we had a great support team. So the support team took us to the end of the race, and you know, he went on to win the Vet Junior race as well, and so did I later. So he's a good paddler, and that was 2 in the bag. And then my old school friend Neil, who lived in Devizes, he said, "It's my turn." And I said, "Right, here's the hobby. You learn to paddle the hobby." And so I gave it to him in September, and then we'll firm up in January. And we were both Sea Scouts together down in Paignton. And he didn't go out in the hobby. But at Christmas, he said, "I bought a boat." And he had bought a Curtin Meister from Holloway and Holloway. It was the second Meister out of the mould, I believe. They had done the race. They were members of Devizes Hockey Club. And I went down to see it. I'd never heard of a Meister. I'd heard of the Mystere and the Mirage. And the Meister was in between. And it was a beautiful boat. And then Neil and I started paddling. We went to the same primary school. So I was 39 in my first race, and hang on, let's see. So by the time I did it with Neil, I was about 44. And so we got on. You know, we knew we would get on. We used to row together. So it was our 20th outing when we did the Devizes to Westminster senior race.
So short time span then in terms of some people's training regimes.
He's a hockey player, and he's a very, very good hockey player. So he's been in the RAF all those years, and 35 now. So he understood what training was. We did have a conversation at the end of Waterside C, and I said, "If you paddle like that in Waterside D, we're not racing." And the senior race that year was balmy sunshine. He had a supporter from the RAF who ran the first portage with us, or ran from the start to the first portage, which was 11 miles, and in blazing sunshine, and it was just a glorious, glorious race. We got lost in the fog twice, and when you have a head torch or a torch on the front of your boat in fog, all you see is a 10p sized beam of light. And we went into 2 marinas, and we were coming out, and sadly, we faced the same C2 as we came out of the marina, and they said, "Did you want to follow us?" Obviously you can't, because you're a faster boat and your pride would be hurt. But it was a marvellous race, and we came in 34th, and that was my easiest race, I would say. We phoned up the next day. He said, "How do you feel?" I said, "Fine." I said, "How do you feel?" He said, "Fine, I haven't got an aching bone." And it's one of the things he's most proud of, as a physical endeavour, and this is somebody who's, played hockey at the highest levels and still the Devizes to Westminster certificates on his wall. And as I say, it was a most comfortable race.
Throughout your different finishes, different classes, you've also paddled different boats. You've obviously done K2 straight through.
Yeah.
You've also done the C2 as well, haven't you?
Yeah, C2.
For sort of anyone that hasn't sort of dabbled in both, what's it like doing the race? How do they compare doing the race in the K2 and the C2?
Well, I bought my prop. So in the K2, I mean, we've got the Meister, and this is what I needed. The cockux cut out. And if you can, core out where the cockux rubs, then you're in for a comfortable ride. And the Meister is a wobble factor 7 or 8, and that's always a comfortable ride. But as you get older, getting in and out of the boat becomes a little more difficult, especially if you're, I'm 95 kilograms, so 15 stone and a bit. So it's not always easy to squeeze yourself in and out of the cockpit. And my middle daughter said the only way she would do the race if she did it in a canoe. So I got a racing canoe, so a racing C2. And the getting in and getting out is a joy. You just run along the bank and, well, you don't. You can joggle along the bank and jump in and you stand up and you climb out. So the portaging in a C2 is for the elder or the older gentleman, and it's very comfortable. But I get frustrated with the steering, obviously, and I hate canoes in the Devizes to Westminster as a kayak because as they don't have a rudder, the Bernoulli effect sucks. And if you're passing a boat with water streaming towards you, you are drawn together, everybody, especially the kayakers. If you see a C2, have a wide berth or overtake because we're drawn towards you. It's lovely to say hello, obviously, but kind of annoying when they think it's us, but we don't have steering and we are drawn towards all other craft.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it's a bit slower, but it's lazy days. It's lovely, but yeah, it's comfortable.
But they've both kind of got their challenges, haven't they? In a sense of, obviously, with the Canadians, inherently aren't as fast necessarily as the kayaks. As you say, don't have a rudder, so harder to steer. But they balance each other out. So obviously, the K2s you can steer, but they're harder to balance. There is much of a challenge, aren't they, in no matter what the craft you're taking on?
It is. And I'd say on the tideway, with the kayak, you have got the advantage of closed cockpits. And that's a real advantage when you're going through large swell. We had about 2 inches of freeboard at the back of our C2. Both of us were 95 kilograms. So that's quite a lot of mass. And we had to bring ourselves into the middle of the boat as far as we could, just to give us, some protection. But I think it was Cock Robin, perhaps, something like that, a boat which was coming the other way. This was with a guy called Robert Whitehead when I did the race this year. And you could see the wash going out on either side. So we were in a position to take the wash as best we could. But I think it stuck the stern underwater and we flipped over with about 3 miles to go. And thankfully the Sea Scouts were on board to say, yeah, the boy's notorious over there. He does it to the rowers. How can we help? So Robert, being athletic and agile, did a one-hand push up into the boat and they dragged me to the side. So, yeah, that was this year's race. And so the C2, you have to get used to handling it in swirly water. It will go where it wants to, and you have to work hard.
And as you were saying, earlier, you've obviously blind in one eye.
Yeah.
Clearly doesn't stop you doing the race with the number of finishes under your belt, but it does have some challenges, doesn't it? In a sense.
So my night vision isn't brilliant. I don't like to advertise that to potential crew members. And I don't do steps very well in daylight because they just kind of look like horizontal lines to me. And then at night time, it's bad. So this year, Hambledon Lock, I took the steps and obviously carried on down the steps, but I carried on into the Thames because I just didn't see where the steps ended. So Paul Fielden was happy to take that into account when he awarded me the John White Trophy. And I mean, John White as a triple amputee, what an inspiration. So I've overtaken John White in a couple of races. Mind you, in a K1 Hasler race, he overtook me. But in the Devizes to Westminster, my backside had gone. And then John White paddled across to the portage and he was lifted out of the boat by his mates and he ran the portage on his stumps and then they lowered him back into the water, into his boat. And I decided my backside wasn't painful after all. And I mean, he's a legend in his own lifetime. It's a wonderful thing. So my one eye, I don't think matters too much. It's not great for scale. And, you know, some of my landings at portages have been rather blunt. And if someone's running past on my blind side, I might take them out accidentally, you know, and I just have to apologise. So it's one of those things. There are handicaps that some people can't see, and you have to be polite. And everybody along the canal bank is always supportive. You know, if they're offering me a biscuit or a jelly baby on my blind side, I'll take the one on the sighted side. You know, that's it. I don't mean to be rude.
I mean, are there any sort of like things you have to sort of like think about in addition from that perspective in terms of like coming up to portages and getting out? Is there anything that you do sort of like slightly different and to make sure that you're sort of like taking into account sometimes obviously unable to kind of be aware of the surroundings to a certain extent?
No. I don't take them into account. You do need to practice your portages. I mean, I've had Jim Lemon, he was a Pangbourne paddler and very, very slick on his portages. And you come in at 45 and you brake hard and you swing it in so that you are stationary when you land. When I first started paddling, I was coming in at speed and I put my hand down at the cunning man, running it along to slow myself down, and I cut myself on glass. You cannot use your hand as a brake. You know, on a portage, if there's rough wood, that is your race over. And again, you'll tear your cagoule if you're sticking it down. And the other thing, getting out at portages, you put a flat hand down to push down. Never put your elbow down to pull yourself up. Because, I mean, there's a lot of me. And early on, I split. Whatever runs under there, it split. And it bled internally. And all the time, I aggravated my elbow because something wasn't right. So flat hand and stationary to get out, and get out together. You know, practice getting out together. There's a little dig there at my wife and her crew because they get out one at a time, but they run like the clappers. And in a portage, so Caroline and Faye, it's a delight to see. It's poetry in motion as they run along the bank in their beautiful little steps. And there's nothing I can do about it because I'm still trying to get out of my boat. So portage is over 77 portages. If you're a minute slower because you joggle or you walk, then you're going to be an hour and a half slower. So it's up to you. If you want to, you can walk. You can do 24 hours if you paddle effectively, but it's better to joggle every time. So another race class which I did, and I think this was my fifth race, was the Veteran Junior, which I did with my daughter Eleanor. So Eleanor is slight, and I didn't feel I could put her in the boat in the Vet Junior race immediately because it would have been child care or child protection issues because she's so slight. But she decided to do it with a kayaking friend of hers, Miriam. And so they were two club members of Pangbourne who did the junior race, which is unusual because usually it's schools. And they finished. So that invited me to put Eleanor in the boat, and we attempted the race Veteran Junior. So at the start, I looked at the entries and I spoke to a chap and I said, "And how good are you?" He said, "I'm Division 4. And I thought, well, that's right, I'm Division 5. I don't mind racing you. I said, "How good's your son?" And he said, "Well, he's just got a gold medal at the European Juniors." So I thought, oh, well. So that was Albert Hicks's dad and Albert Hicks. So I was happy for them to take the win, but I would stay as close as we could. So Eleanor and I We were paddling the Meister. I had to go in the front because otherwise I nagged too much. So we were a wee bit nose down because I was twice her weight. She's 7.5 and I was 15 stone. And it got to day 3 and Mr. Hicks hurt his shoulder. And I was obviously devastated at being in the lead with 20 minutes to go, or 20 minutes lead on day 4. So we were going around in the harbour at Teddington, and Peter Ford said, if it was 10 minutes, I'd beat you. I said, it's 20 minutes and we're going to beat you. So we went side by side for the first 7 miles down to Hammersmith Bridge. And then I said to Eleanor, we can let him go. And so we drifted in knowing that we were in first position in Veteran Junior, the slowest winning time ever, but it was a win. So Eleanor was delighted. So she later went into the RAF, and on her CV, it's got, completed the DW, and she said, I'd just like to add, I actually won the DW. So it's a marvellous thing. So if you've got the opportunity, Veteran Junior allows you to bring one of your children along in the race or one of the junior members of a club into the race. And it's a small class, so it's a chance of winning and getting the Fred Bartlett Trophy. And I would say it was cold. So we had to wait for the juniors to start the race to break the ice on the canal. And Eleanor, being only 7.5 stone, was generally pale blue at the end of races. So the safety officer would sit next to her while she cried gently and just said, "Are you okay?" And Eleanor would have to say, "Yes, I'm fine." So, and then later, about 10 years later, she said, "Dad, I need to do the senior race." So as a 10-year anniversary, so 2023, we did the senior race straight through as well.
Some achievement in terms of getting that far. Obviously, getting close to, we won't be far away from doing your 1,000 mile twice and getting 2,000 miles, will you? Is that something you'll aim for?
Not out loud. Yeah, so I have got a couple of unfinished races. So my friend Max, another school friend, he and I have said we will have another go, because the first time, I wouldn't say it ended acrimoniously because we're still very good friends, but I did finish Thames side 1 alone in the boat. Slightly nose down because he decided he would run back to the start.
Right.
And so I can be antagonising, and I just wanted to test how he dealt with that. So Max went on later to finish the race twice, I think, but he needs to go under 24 hours. So, we need to just test the friendship one more time. So we have said, yes, we'll do it. And then Mrs. Walker, Caroline, who's been my supporter all the way through, she and I have not done the race together, and she's happy to do the 4-day race. Yeah. So she has said she would, so we would do that perhaps for our 60th birthday. Oh gosh, that's next year.
You just committed again.
Oh, but I had a heart attack earlier this year, so I'm not doing it next year. I've said I will marshal. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
There's someone who's been very key to you and obviously been able to take on DW and finish it, isn't there?
Yeah, that is Brian. So Brian Greenham, I mean, he's a legend with, he held the record, 15 hours and 34 minutes. And someone pointed him out to me when I was doing one of the Haslers and said, "That's Brian." And I thought, well, I John Ince's record sheets, I love numbers, and just to see Brian up there, I think he's got 14 wins, or 14 finishes and 9 wins. So he's won 9 out of his 14 finishes. And so I thought I would sidle up to him and introduce myself. And for all those years that I've known him, so probably from 2006, I have been asking to paddle with Brian, and he's feigned deafness, which is a real shame. I think the only time he's spoken to me was, when he started a conversation was, "Oh, beaten by your wife then." And I'd fallen out of my boat twice during the Hasler race, and he thought that was a good topic of conversation. So Brian, thank you for everything. You've been a real source of inspiration. Oh, and he did invite me to get on his wash when we were doing the K1 race. and he beat me by 4 hours. So I did just under 21 hours, and he did 16 hours dead, I think. So, or 16 hours 50. Yeah. So Brian is my mentor, and well, everyone will know who Brian is, hopefully. And if you haven't, introduce yourself, because he's just a wonderful chap and always there to help.
If you're training for the ThruDark Devizes to Westminster International Canoe Race or any long-distance paddling event, you need to have your nutrition strategy prepared. Precision Fuel and Hydration provide education and products for events like the DW, and my go-to are their PF30, PF30 caffeine and PF90 gels. They taste clean and simple, they're easy to take on the move, and the amount of carb in each is on the front of the packet, so you can keep track of how much you're taking on. The PF90 even has a resealable top, which makes it perfect for long paddles. Their electrolyte tablet comes in different strengths, and for me, there isn't a better option out there for staying hydrated during a DW. Check out the link in our show notes to read Precision's guide on how to fuel and hydrate for the DW. And if you have any questions about your strategy, then you can also book in for a free video call with their team and talk it through with an actual human. You keep obviously saying that earlier you were going on about, your support crew got you to the end and so forth. I mean, just how important are the support crews out there?
Well, if you want to do the Devizes to Westminster, you need to marry well, is what I found. So if you married Caroline, you're in for a win. I mean, we were out early this morning. We did 7 miles together. So she understands the race, and she understands that it causes me to be a happier person. And she's an intelligent person. I mean, the thing is, she has a sense of direction, and she can read a schedule, and she understands that it's not her role to take me out of the race. Her role is only to say, let's discuss it at the next portage. And anybody who we take into our K or DW support team is with that instruction. You don't listen to any complaints. If an arm is hanging off, do your best to tape it up and put it back on. But it's not your role to say, there is something hurting. Your role is to put them back in the boat and say, we'll deal with it at the next portage. And that's understood. And I mean, ever since the first race, when we were reported missing and we did 35 hours in total, you just know you're going to finish, because Caroline doesn't allow us not to finish. So yes, the support crew, if I said it was 50% important, it's more than that. Okay, if you've got a good support crew and they know the race and they know where they're going, they will have a spare rudder in the car, they will have a spare paddle in the car, and they will, with trackers, they will be there and they'll tell you where to come in and where to get out, and they will feed other crews and they will give other crews your spare rudder. And all of that has happened, and it's a marvellous thing. So well done, Caroline. I did invite her along, but she says, no, my role's to support. So, there was one year where she did the race as well. So she was in a racing kayak with Faye, and I was in a C2, and we were the same speed. And she thought it would be funny in the waterside races to start with us in sight and finish with us in sight, but a little closer. So, that was quite a year. And the only reason she didn't beat me was because she had to queue at the ladies. No. And I acknowledged that. Yeah, so we were separated by 20 minutes at the end of the race.
Right, okay.
Yeah. It was wonderful.
As we say, support crews important, training's obviously massively important. Yeah. The nutritional side of it as well. Everyone has their own take. Yeah. Obviously, as we sort of mentioned in the last episode with Paul, you've got obviously your elite paddlers will be on a very specific, specialised diet and so forth. And that kind of changes depending where you are in the field as to kind of how extreme you kind of take your nutrition and diet. What's it like for you?
I have a wide-necked flask with boiled potatoes, and that's my go-to. And also rice pudding. I love rice pudding. And I like pork pie. Painkillers now do interfere, as in they cause me to have stomach problems, and I do tend to throw up a bit now because I get a shoulder pain, and it's all right up until 6 miles. And then I have learnt from some of the elite paddlers that you get your painkillers in early, as in you start alternating your paracetamol and ibuprofen from at the start of the race, and you can do them every 2 hours, and then your support crew knows what you're on, and you stay on those painkillers. And it would be, that's what some of the elite paddlers do, and that's what I've done. You're going to get through. The pain will be controlled. There will be pain, but you know that you're already being supported to fight that pain. It's not going to get worse, and just get on with it. And you are going to have a stomach upset. It's best to keep, some food in place, but that's not going to stop you from finishing. You get used to it.
Yeah, and do you tend to sort of stick to the sort of like the same type of like the potatoes, or rice pudding like throughout the whole race, or do you mix it up with anything in between, or?
For me, it's coffee comes in later. So once you're off the canal and once you're into the dark, then it is nice to have a cup of tea and a cup of coffee. I like soup as well, apricots. Just, you can tell me what it is, but it doesn't really taste in the end. It's just going in. Food for me is fuel, and I'm not too particular. My wife will tell you that perhaps, sending her out to find a pork pie at 2:30 in the morning isn't her favourite thing to do, but that's what got me through. And again, another paddler it did stop at Hammersmith Bridge because he was told he was going to be fed, and he wasn't going to take another stroke further until he was fed. And so it is a balance. Get used to it. Do waterside D, but I think the most important thing, rather than food stopping you, is to have the ethos: we are going to finish.
And with your training, when do you normally start training? How far out from the race do you start to get going with your training?
September. I think if I haven't chosen my partner by September, then I need to go out and do that. So that's a good time to do the race, or to get prepared, and do the warm-up races. The Frank Lusmore, January the 6th or 7th, something like that, is a great race to learn the lower half of the tideway. Well, not the tideway, the lower half of the tide of the locked Thames. And Richmond, you're flowing past Richmond as quickly as you like. They stop you half a mile early if it's a really fast flow, so that you can, manage to get out at the boat club rather than struggle for the rest of the day. And then do waterside A, B, C and D. If there's no ice on the canal, you do those. And you do waterside, Thames side 1 and 2. I mean, the build-up of those races is just as I need them. And there's no substitute. If you can't get to those races, do similar distances on your own water. I've supported it with sea kayaking. I go sea kayaking, and that just gives you a taste of what waves can do. If you've never met a wave, then don't avoid going out in wind against waves at Henley. If there's an opportunity to meet wind against waves, then go for it, because it can occur in the race, and it is intimidating. It's quite nice to have white lights going along and quite close to the bank on the Henley Strait when it is rough, because other people are coping with it. They might not be coping with it any better than you, but they look like they are. And I have known friends get out and be put off by the waves at Henley, and it's not like that always. Most of the time it's lovely, but it can upset some people.
And obviously, course knowledge is vital to make it to the end. Obviously, you know that more than most, and obviously with your expeditions in the past on the course. But I mean, how often now? So even with sort of the course knowledge that you do have, how often are you training on the course generally these days?
Well, I thought you were alluding to a crash that I had last year. So last year, or the one before last year, Cookham has 5 exits, and a tree was blocking one of the exits, and it was the darkest night. So this was 2024, and it goes weir, and then lock cut, and then weir, and then backwater and something. And we couldn't go under the tree, so I knew where I wanted to go, and I just said to James, who was at the front, we need to go right. And the next thing we saw was Danga Weir. There was quite a few Danga Weirs on the way. And then there was a tree, and we got pinned under that tree. So it was about a 6-inch branch across the boat. And I tried to lift the branch off, and then I had to take my hand off the paddle to get 2 hands to lift the branch off, which pushed the boat under, and we lost the paddle. And then we scrambled up the bank, and we were in the garden of the Osney Club, I think, and it's terrace fencing all the way around. Oh, anyway, so that's important to know the course. So the canal is known, and if you do the Frank Lusmore race and you do the Thameside 1 and Thameside 2, then you are getting a good look at the river in daylight. And then even when in my first race, Tug took me down other locks that we hadn't yet met. And it's important to know them. And obviously you get the map and the layouts. And there's the books of the Thames side of the DW race. Get those books, have a look at Google Maps, know them. I have no sense of direction. I cannot support people in the DW. I am told to marshal. If it's a year I'm not doing it, I marshal because I can't support. I've got no sense of direction. So, but I do know the locks now. So it is important to know those locks. So learn them in daylight, and then you'll be far more confident. Yeah, don't do it without knowledge. Those people who come from America to do the race again, it was rather sad to lose one of them at Aldermaston because he went straight down and into the marina and then was down there for half an hour, which kind of ruined his race. So yeah, it's important to get knowledge of the locks by doing the waterside races and Thameside 1 and Thameside 2 if you can.
So yeah, final one. For anyone that might not have done this race before, what's the sort of the main piece of advice you've got for them?
Carry a spare rudder. Because that can be your whole race over. I mean, you might think that a K2, being long and thin, will go straight without its rudder. It won't. Okay, so get a spare rudder, stick it in your buoyancy behind the seat or under the seat, and then you are assured that the one thing that can break and does break, you can refit and carry on within a quarter of an hour. So do carry a spare rudder. Do cut the little hole out in the back of your seat because, that saves so much wear and tear. Okay. And well, I mean, it's there, enjoy it. And it serves, as I say, that benchmark in life that you can face this because you've faced the Devizes to Westminster.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great note to end the podcast on.
Thank you very much.
But no, cheers for joining us for this episode.
It's been a pleasure.
And this is our final episode before Christmas, as you can probably tell from behind us here of the Christmas decorations. But we'll be back in the new year with another episode, and we look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you.